Hey, it's Jordan with TYT Network, Thursday, August 4th, and I am here with Tim Canova. He is the primary challenger to Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz for Florida's 23rd District, which encompasses Broward County, Miami-Dade County in southern Florida. Your profile has risen in recent weeks as Debbie Wasserman Schultz has resigned from the DNC, obviously came out many different things that were not too kind to her. You just had a poll come out, to be fair, was commissioned by your campaign, but showed you kind of within striking distance, 8 percentage points down. If you kind of get specific on the wording, it showed you even closer. Um, I've been told and I've read you have a very good ground game down there. Do you feel, aside from just you're the candidate who's going to say, of course we could win, do you feel more hope than you felt months ago than we when we talked?
I think I was probably pretty hopeful when we spoke months ago. And I've always thought that this was a very winnable race because we had all the issues on our side. And one of our best secret weapons was Debbie Wasserman Schultz herself, who had been making a mess at the DNC from before I even got in the race. I always thought that the Democratic convention was going to be her Waterloo, and it was. You mentioned that we've raised a lot of money, and we have. I think we're up over $2.8 million now. And we did commission a poll. However, the poll was done by a very reputable polling firm. In contrast, when Debbie Wasserman Schultz tries to announce poll results, they're polls that are done by a super PAC that happens to be mailing, literature into the district on her behalf.
Right.
When you talk about Debbie Wasserman Schultz, we're speaking about someone who tried to rig a national presidential election. So she has no credibility whatsoever when talking about her own race here in the district. There's nothing that she would not try to do to maintain her seat. She has shown herself to be unethical, to have poor judgment, and her character is definitely in question.
You know, I now that I'm not at the DNC or the RNC, I've had time to go through a lot of these WikiLeaks emails. I kind of got a sense from the emails from her, she is a more of a political operative and a fundraiser than being in touch with really struggling people. You get a sense that it was more about ruthless politics, setting a media narrative, really kind of a campaign machine. Then what are we going to do for people without health care or people working two jobs? There's no emails about that came out, obviously. Why are you better for the people in your district, but more importantly, to come to Congress and to actually get something done, to force Republicans, to force corporate Democrats, to not, kind of work around the edges with these bipartisan compromises, but actually kind of push the issues Bernie pushed?
Yeah. Well, you take a look at the way Congress works, and Debbie Wasserman Schultz is just a primary example of what's wrong with Congress. 60 Minutes had an episode recently. They did a segment on how members of Congress raise money in their election campaigns. And these members are going to call centers and dialing for dollars 30 hours a week or more. So it becomes a full-time job getting on the phone and calling wealthy people, wealthy CEOs, millionaires and billionaires, basically. That's where they're raising money from. And if you spend 30 hours a week on the phone, week in, week out, month in, month out, you start adopting their worldview. You're not representing the people anymore. You become very detached from what their interests are, the interests of ordinary working folks who are struggling right now. And, my campaign is completely different. It is modeled very much on what Bernie has done, what Bernie Sanders has done. We've raised $2.8 million without me making a single telephone call, without dialing anybody asking for a penny. We've done it by getting our message out there on the internet, and folks have donated online 160,000 plus donations of $17 each. So I haven't been hearing 30 hours a week how difficult it is to be a rich person in this country and what their agenda is. I've been free to get out and around the district and to meet with all kinds of people. As a law school professor for 20 plus years, I already know what ails students. I know the debt crisis and the jobs crisis they're facing. Mm-hmm. In the past 8 or 9 months being out on the campaign trail, I have a better idea now than ever before of the problems of school teachers, of nurses, of senior citizens, the problems facing the environment in South Florida with this blue-green algae tide and the threat to the aquifer, the problems from payday lenders and what the kinds of predatory practices that they impose on low-income folks who have no other recourse but to go to these payday lenders. I am much more in tune with the people of this district than Debbie Wasserman Schultz has been for decades.
And if Donald Trump wasn't such a buffoon, Hillary Clinton is a beatable candidate. He hasn't been talking about, most recently we've had 1.2% growth. The labor participation rate is pretty anemic, even though the unemployment number artificially is low. That's not the real number. There's a lot of economic markings. President Obama's done good things, but at the same time, the economy, this is kind of, we fall into this new normal where, it's considered good if you have 2 jobs. It's considered good if you have health care that it's, a $5,000 deductible. I could go on. Right. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, I kind of see, is on this Hillary Clinton nexus. I don't know the clear economic message she's pushing in your race, other than let's continue what President Obama has done. What immediately do you think needs to be done economically to put a shock in the system and help struggling, the people that were awoken by Bernie Sanders and to a lesser extent Donald Trump?
You're right about Debbie Wasserman Schultz and her message. I've seen her speak a few times, even before I became a candidate, and she might as well have pom-poms and be a cheerleader. She keeps talking about how many jobs are created each month and the low unemployment rate. Now, our economy fell off a cliff in 2008. We lost more than 8 million jobs. So even though there's been consistent job growth since then, it's certainly not enough to fill up that big depression in jobs. You were absolutely correct to say about the declining labor participation rate. It masks the official unemployment rate number masks the reality that we all face. So what can be done for the jobs market to create jobs? Well, first of all, the Federal Reserve, which I have studied for years, can be helping Main Street and not just Wall Street. And that doesn't require a new act of Congress. The Federal Reserve already has that authority on its books. And when you compare what the Fed did in the 1930s, when it made loans directly to small businesses on Main Street, with what it's doing now, where Wall Street got $29 trillion in near zero interest loans in the first 2 years of the crisis, in 2009 and 2010 alone, but nothing for Main Street, you see that the whole financial system is upside down. We have a trickle-down recovery where the stock market has come back, where real estate prices in downtown Manhattan or Washington, D.C. or San Francisco or Miami are so high now that only the wealthy, the super wealthy, can afford to live there. Everyone else is stuck with a long commute and high rents. This is a trickle-down recovery. We need a bottom-up approach. We need public jobs programs like they had in the New Deal. Instead, what did we get? 700,000 school teachers, K-12, lost their jobs in 2009 and 2010. There should have been federal revenue sharing to prevent that from happening. Part of the problem was that President Obama turned to people like Larry Summers and Timothy Geithner to be his top economic advisors and Treasury Secretary. And part of the problem has been the intractable opposition by Republicans in Congress. Both are to blame for this crisis that's been going on for 8 years right now. And it is a crisis. Part of what makes it frustrating is that the mainstream media and the establishment of both parties don't even want to recognize it for the crisis it is. And yet it's been going on for 8 years, which means it's not just high unemployment, high hidden unemployment and underemployment. It's high long-term hidden unemployment and underemployment. People have gotten frustrated because the can has been kicked down the road for a long time, and they don't see the politicians, the insiders who are taking care of them at all. And the long-term nature of this is what's leading to this backlash against all the incumbents in this country. You saw it 2 years ago when Eric Cantor lost, the second-ranking Republican in the House, and you see it with the rise in the past year of both Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, and I believe in the traction that my campaign has gotten.
And specifically to the voters in your district, correct me if I'm wrong, but Hillary Clinton beat Bernie Sanders in that district sizably during the primary. What should they be looking for, other than the fact that we now see what kind of person Debbie Wasserman Schultz is? What should they be looking for if they voted for Hillary Clinton in you that would make them vote for you? Because to be real, that district has parts that are run down and struggling, but there's also very wealthy areas that would more go towards a Hillary Clinton or Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Well, I'll tell you this, even areas that are run down and in need went for Hillary Clinton. And Hillary Clinton had a good campaign in South Florida and all over Florida. Here in my district, she had several campaign field offices. Bernie Sanders had none. He had one in all of South Florida. Whether it was bad strategy or just insufficient resources for that stage of the campaign, I'm not sure. But he didn't really show up. He lost the district badly. However, look how times have changed even since March when we had this presidential primary here in Florida. The poll that we just did, and again, a very reputable polling firm, and I've disclosed even the bad information in this poll. The bad information is that I'm not well known enough yet, and I'm not trying to hide that. We're getting our message out. But the good news in the poll is that Bernie Sanders' popularity in this district is now 83%, whereas that's 30 to 40 points higher than Debbie Wasserman Schultz, I believe. Why is Bernie surging so high? It's because people saw how Debbie Wasserman Schultz manipulated the process, rigged it, many would say, to undermine his campaign. We all feared, or many people feared, that he would blow up that convention and that it would mean Donald Trump in the White House. What did Bernie Sanders do? You could agree or disagree with him, but clearly his motives were honorable, patriotic, trying to unify a party that had screwed him over in many ways. Mm-hmm. And that's what he did. He put the interests of party and country ahead of his own ego. And he is flying high in the polls now because of that. If Bernie Sanders had come to campaign for me before the Democratic convention, who knows what that would have meant. If he comes to campaign for me now, it's only good news. And I'll say another thing. Hillary Clinton, to win the state of Florida, which is really crucial, has to win Broward County by 200 to 250,000 votes. This is the bluest county in the whole state, and my district is one of the bluest districts in the state. Yet the voter turnout in Broward County and in my district has been among the very lowest in the state. That's the legacy of Debbie Wasserman Schultz and her cronies. The voters never have a real choice. There's never a primary challenge. Their needs are not addressed, so they get demoralized and don't even turn out in a general election. Well, what is my campaign doing? We have gotten thousands of Republicans and independents to now register Democrat to vote for me. We are growing the party. If Hillary Clinton wants to win the state of Florida, she should be rooting for me to win this election on August 30th and hoping that I will campaign aggressively for her.
And I know you got to go real quick. Obviously, Zika virus is spreading a little bit in this area in southern Florida. You see enough being done by the state and federal government to make sure it doesn't expand further, but also help the people suffering right now?
No, you don't see enough. And, Congress recessed for a 7-week vacation. And what did Wasserman Schultz do with her time? She flew up to Cleveland to try to chase the media spotlight at the Republican convention to avoid being in the district, to avoid debates against me. She said she was too busy. And, then after the Democratic convention and her disgraceful ouster, she was disgraced. What did she do? She just went on a vacation with her family. Now she's come back in the district. Everybody's been wondering where she's been. And she's, again, avoiding public forums and debates. We had 2 candidates forums 2 nights in a row. She wasn't there. There was an empty chair. She's going to an event this evening that's going to be highly choreographed. I'm sure they're not going to have questions from the audience. Meanwhile, you do have the Zika virus threat. She should have been complaining loudly that Congress shouldn't take a 7-week vacation until this crisis is addressed. It's a public health problem.
Right.
in her district in South Florida. It's shameful, but this is the kind of representation South Florida has had for years. Last year, Debbie Wasserman Schultz had the highest rate of absenteeism of anyone in the Florida congressional delegation except Senator Marco Rubio, who's running for president. She introduced all of 5 bills. Not a single one of those bills got a hearing or a vote in a committee. This is a picture of somebody who is completely disengaged with legislating, with representing her constituents. And on issue after issue, she's been shilling for big corporations and avoiding, ignoring the interests of her constituents. And that's on the economy, payday lending, predatory finance, the war on drugs, mass incarceration. She's even against medical marijuana. Her support for big sugar companies that have been polluting Lake Okeechobee and creating this blue-green algae tide that now threatens even the drinking water in the aquifer of South Florida. It's shameful, and it's becoming a crisis here, and people are beginning to wake up to it.
Right. Where can people find you if they want to find out more, donate, all that?
Go to timcanova.com. People can donate. Even the small donations are helping because they're mounting up. This is people power. It's a real grassroots effort. And they can also go to our phone banking link on our homepage. We got a lot of folks stepping up in phone banking. It's helping increase our name recognition. And, for those who have the means and the time, please come to South Florida in the next 3-4 weeks. This is ground zero of the political movement, of the progressive grassroots movement. We win here. We can win anywhere.
Well, I will be one of those people. I'll be covering your race in person in about 2 weeks, I think. So thanks for your time, and I'll see you down there.
Thank you, Jordan. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Have a good one.
Thank you.